Hi, my name is Ben Shultz. I'm a marketing manager at Aqua Membranes, and today is the first episode for myself that I'm going to be talking to water professionals, water marketers, water salespeople, really focusing on the water industry. And today I have Antoine from the Don't Waste Water podcast, and really it's just he's become a brand in of himself in the water industry for really covering new innovation technologies and covering what big companies are doing in the industry as a whole. So thanks for taking the time to talk with me
You're too kind, and thanks a lot for having me. I'm a fan.
today. Good, good. Yes, no, whenever you told me you're a fan, it feels great because I think everyone always underestimates themselves and what they're doing. And so it was really awesome and flattering. But in the conversation, just wanted to ask you a few quick questions that maybe people like myself that are following me or just across the water space online might want to know. How do you feel about that?
You're very courageous because you're asking a French guy to have quick questions, and that is not within my skills, but I'll do my best.
All right. So we'll get right into it. First, I was doing some online stalking, as most people do, and you've been with George Fisher for a long time. But before that, you ranged a variety of different water companies from Veolia. There was a company in Switzerland, and now you're here with George Fisher in North America. And if you could just take a second to see, like, what brought you into water and what interested you, and then what's it been like traveling all over the world?
So first, I haven't been with so many companies. It's just that it
Okay.
was part of all of that was part of the same company, which ended being acquired by Veolia because I was within Ozonia, who belonged to Degremont Technologies, who belonged to Degremont, who belonged to Suez, and Suez got acquired by Veolia. So all of that is the same. And my first company I ever joined was GDF Suez, so the mother company of Suez before they sold Suez. So all of that is like complex M&A game, but at the end of the day, I ended it doing always the same. To your
Mhm.
question, um,
Yes.
how did I become a water professional? It's always the same. I don't know how much of that was my decision and how much of that was baked in me because my parents met in the engineering school I ended up attending. So when I was
Huh.
4 or 5, my father was working on river management and he was trading lunch invitations with the guys running the excavators in exchange for me being able to mess around with the excavators. So I made like a mess with a bunch of rivers, and that's when I got the thing to believe that water was cool enough and fun enough. So
Yeah.
I guess that's when I got into that. To your question of traveling the world, actually, that was my first job. So I had a very fun first job, which is that when I was in that said engineering school, in the last year of the engineering school, there was a contest for engineers and business schools, so engineering school, business schools. And GDF Suez, who now is called Engie, wanted to hire 4 young professionals to get them to travel the world and visit the installation of the group and get to do a bit of documentation of what they were surprised about, loved about, what would be cool to do. And yeah, I took part of the contest, and very luckily for me, they were terrible at communication, meaning that for somewhat the dream job, like you're paid to travel the world and visit places, they
Yeah.
had 16 applications for 4 positions. So 16 for 4 applications, the ratio was already very good. But on top of that, they wanted to have engineers and business school people. And they had 1 engineer, me, and 15 guys from the business schools. So it ended up like I knew from the get go that I had good chances to get the job, and I got the job. And so for 1 year, I was simply traveling everything east from France because they split the world in two. So one team of two
Mhm.
went west, one team of two went east. So I was going east. And so I started in France and I ended up in Australia and did lots of stops in between. And that was like a fast track, fast pace, get to understand what it's all about, seeing water development initiatives, water treatment, wastewater treatment in places like from everywhere from Germany to Thailand through Singapore, India, and of course Australia. So that was, yeah, I was super lucky. And it was a very interesting fast track to get to understand what that is all about.
Yeah, getting to see treatment all over the world. Like, there's only so much you can learn in a classroom. So I assume going and seeing different techniques, different people. And so if you get to see how other people are doing it, you get to really branch out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting to hear that you got brought into the industry through messing with rivers, because that's how I got my interest in Albuquerque. We have a river called the Rio Grande, which is not a big river, even though that's what the name indicates. It's very small in comparison, but it's a very important river. I learned a lot about it in my undergraduate, and that's what actually got me interested in water technology. To see the source and have connection to it and mess around with it and understand it really brings you in. But before we go too far into that, I want to move on to the next question. Now we know a little bit about you. You've got a lot of experience and you've covered all sorts of different technologies. If you want to get more into Anthony's opinions about this, if you're viewing this, go check out his channel. But what do you think is the next upcoming technology, or what's the next like part of the water industry that you think is really going to grow? And what's your prediction?
Membrane spacers. Watch that space.
You know what? I'd agree with you. I might be a little biased, but I think you're right. I think you're onto something there.
I don't think
Yes.
the water industry is made that way, that having a winner takes it all is not really the approach. You will never find like a one size fits all type of case. What's interesting, what's funny is if you look at people coming from outside the industry, so people who don't know water, they have that belief that one thing is going to kill everything. And when they have that belief, usually that belief goes to atmospheric water generation.
Mm-hmm.
And really, no disregard, nothing negative about that. It's a technology, it has its place under the sun. It's just that it will not take over the market like an outside billionaire just making a bet on water would believe. Now,
Mm-hmm.
and it will sound biased because I'm talking with you, but I
Yes.
think membranes are the closest there is from that technology, which is like taking over. And if you look on the history of membrane in the 90s was the thing where people were telling you, yeah, sounds good, is just far too expensive. Because at the time, it was far too expensive and technologically speaking, not yet to the level we see it today. What has changed is that when you start looking more closer into the main driver in our sector, which is regulation, when regulations came around and said we want better water, we want Escherichia coli out of water, we want Cryptosporidium out of water, all of a sudden that thing which was too expensive and that nobody wanted became the go-to treatment. And the big shift that makes is scale. All of a sudden, that thing which is custom fabricated and hence quite expensive becomes mass market. And when it goes mass market, on one hand, it's commoditized, on the other hand, it's much cheaper. And that's what we saw with ultrafiltration. That's what we saw with reverse osmosis. And that's what we start to see with alternative materials around the membrane technology, be it ceramics, be it, if I say Zwitter Ionic, the problem is that it's only one company doing it. So
Yeah.
you're making a bet. But generally speaking, it's really about those new ways to use membranes. And as they become mass markets, they become competitive in a lot of spaces. So you can have the advantage of the membrane without the drawback of the cost, or with less of a drawback with the cost. And then, honestly speaking, I'm a fan for multiple reasons. I'm a fan because I like the way you market yourself, but I'm also a fan
Uh-huh.
of the approach of your company in general, which is like to say we have the thing which is the workhorse of the industry, say reverse osmosis.
Yeah.
What if we made that workhorse simply better than what's off the shelf? And I think this kind of customized approaches to membranes, that is something which would bring the technology in new spaces. And customizing the spacer is one way. Customizing the process around the membrane is another way. It's not contradicting one to another. All of those can come together. But certainly, that physical barrier has its elegance. And if you make it affordable, it sounds like the closest there is to a one size fits all, which is still not a one size fits all, which is still not
Mm-hmm.
the silver bullet that doesn't exist. And last thing, I told you I'm not good to for short answers, but I'm gonna just quote here a good brain. This whole theory that membranes are the closer there is in the water space to a typical tech product, because it's one of the few where you have that scale effect, where you have the thing of get the systems out, and when the systems are out, then basically it's like infinite growth. There are lots of caveats to that, but on the principle, it is pretty true.
Hello, everybody. Editing Ben here. Before we get into more of the conversation, I'd like to thank you all for watching this far. You're going to notice after this you don't see my face anymore. It's because when I recorded it, I had a problem with my camera and I didn't catch the second part of the interview with my video. So you're just going to see a background for Aqua Membranes. Just wanted to clear it up so there's no confusion. Now back in the video. Thanks. Yeah, no, that's not just because you said really nice things about aqua membranes, but I do believe that I about spacers and membrane. Whenever I think that there's so many outside of just aqua membranes, getting to tour different plants, and the more that I've learned in my time with the company, and I think I've learned one that it's not a one size fits all solution generally in treatment. I love getting to tell friends and family about different ways that your water gets treated before it gets to your house. Even when it in my own personal backyard here doing the wastewater treatment plant, I got to go tour and just telling people about dissolved air flotation or membrane bioreactors or whatever it may be. But it's just really cool to get some insight from. I'm certainly new to the whole industry and get some insight and share with people about in your experience what you've seen. So now I'll get into my last question, and this is pertains to myself. Also, many people I'm connected with on LinkedIn, and also I think can go out to people outside of LinkedIn. What is your advice to young professionals in the water industry? And this may even branch out to outside the water industry, but just young professionals in industries like water as well.
Let me preface that by
Yeah.
the fact that we are missing professionals in the water industry. If you are looking for a job, you don't necessarily think of water in the first place, and that's probably the first problem, because there are lots of opportunities, like really in the utility sector. They are really facing a crisis when it comes to getting people in the seats and recruiting
Mhm.
people. That they're missing people drastically, and all over the place. If there's one sector where you always be having a job and very probably never be out of a job, it's the water sector. So just for that, it should be a perk. And then if you look at the way it's paid, which let's acknowledge is also part of the equation, statistics say that for the lower educated people, and I say that with really zero negative connotation, it is much better paid to be in the water sector than on the average of the other industries. So just for that,
That's great.
you're not
Everyone
getting,
likes to be paid well.
yeah, you won't be getting like trader level pays in the water sector, but you're going to be decently paid and you will never be out of a job. So just that should be cool enough. But now we all know, especially our generation, that there is an element of purpose. You want to know that you're doing good. Where will you find a better place in terms of purpose? You're whether protecting the environment because you're cleaning the water, or you're making sure that everybody gets access to water in terms of drinking water, or that the economy keeps flowing because you have $58 trillion of the world economy, which are directly linked to water. So they will need water to function. It's on their critical path. That, in terms of purpose, is pretty cool. But then there's a full element of the water industry being, or the water sector, or the water, whatever we want to call it, being like this thing that nobody even acknowledge it's existing because it's just running smoothly in the back. And sometimes maybe we should need some water crisis for people to realize that what is taken for granted doesn't happen simply by magic. And I moved out of Europe some months ago, but in the place I used to live until then, I was just next to the Rhine River. Is a very mighty European river, one of the big rivers. It's the border for many countries. It's a source of water for many more. And what's funny with the Rhine River is that you don't realize that when you're at the end of the Rhine River, which is in the Netherlands, you are basically getting drinking water, which has been pre-loved, if I want to say that way, several times.
Yeah.
It has been used before the Constance Lake. It has been used again and again. And statistically speaking, it has been used 3 times when it comes to you. So the reason why that is totally safe and the best way to go is because the water industry exists in the first place. Like before the 1960s, it's not that far away, we were simply dumping water in the waterways. And then it wasn't that safe to go to the Rhine River and to use it as your source of drinking water. And even very recently, I think in Europe, Milano and Brussels were some of the last big cities to get their wastewater treatment in place, and that is something happening in the 21st century. We don't realize how recent it is that
Yeah.
is handled. But even if I take a US example, and you have the Clean Water Act in the 70s, before the 70s, the rivers were taking fire. And
Yeah.
that's how fast it goes, like 1 or 2 generations, to forget that all of that is not granted. All of that happens because millions of water professionals are making it happen. So what I would say to young water professionals is, first, you can be super proud of what you're doing in terms of purpose. Second, if you have friends who are struggling or don't know what to do, tell them to come and join you in the water sector. Especially, and I'm going to insist on that one, if you
Yeah.
have women friends, because that is
Yeah.
a major plague of this sector. We have 17% of women. You have more women priests than you have women water professionals. And the reason why I highlight that is because when you have a struggle in terms of getting people's and the jobs filled, and you don't tap into half of the workforce, because I think for roughly 50-50, we have
Yeah.
men and women in the world, you are missing out on something very important in terms of quality of brains and hands available. So we are a
100%.
cool sector. We should be like the coolest of all sectors. And the reason we're maybe not is the mix of people don't know we exist, and
Yeah.
we are not that good at telling our stories. Whenever
100.
you hear people talking about wastewater who are not from within the sector, they will simply chuckle because, hey, it's pee and poo. That's so
Yeah.
funny. So there's a long way to go, but purpose trumps all, and I think we have the best of all purposes.
Yeah, I think the point of that we're really like bad about telling our stories is really interesting. Something that I learned early on because growing up where I grow up here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we have very little water. We get 3 inches of rainwater a year. And until I went to school, I did not realize how dependent it was for water to come out of my tap on one, how much snow we get, and two, how much water are let out from the reservoirs and how controlled the rivers are. I thought the river just flowed. Turns out the river is essentially an engineered canal that delivers our drinking water. And I tell people that now, and that's a very interesting story. It's very compelling, but people just don't know about it, and they don't know how water gets to their tap, what happens when it goes down the toilet, and then in cases where it's done poorly, what happens if your water's not treated well or if there's no regulation around it. There's more and more stories. I could go on, but yeah, no, I think it's great. And the content you make is really great for telling those stories and getting people interested, because right now the internet and podcasts and is I think the best way to tell those stories.
I don't believe in saviors. So I don't think it's because telling great stories that is going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one thing which will change the world, is if all of us, we are millions working in this sector, like literally
Mm-hmm.
millions of people are working in the water sector. If we all get used to what we do is cool and not just something you brush off, I'm having a job. No, what you do is cool. What you
Yeah.
do is literally changing the life of the people around you. Take that, go out and tell the story. And I always tell that story because to me it was a very marking and really something which confirmed my beliefs. Is we have this tradition in France, but I guess in lots of places around the world, to have this 1 or 2 days where you can visit whatever you want in the country. Like it's the open doors for everything. And when my daughter was 6 at the time, I said, okay, it's open doors at Veolia's wastewater treatment plants down the road. Let's visit that.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife looked at me like, why do you hate your daughter? Why do you take her to the treatment plants? Like, it's literally the worst thing to visit. I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm pretty sure it's going to be interesting to her and she will have fun. But
Uh-huh.
I hoped I was right.
Yeah.
And then we visited it and she had a blast. I agree. She understood that when we were flushing at home, the water was going here. And then once it was there, it got lifted, treated, and all those little bacteria were eating it out. And that's how shit it is literally when it comes in. And that's how clean it is when it goes out. That's
Mm-hmm.
magic. And she spent the next weeks like telling, when we were visiting the grandparents, when we were visiting her friends and everything, oh, I went to the wastewater treatment plant. That's so cool. And you know what? My dad is working in that field. She's
Oh.
saying I'm working there. I'm not, but I'm working in that
Yeah.
field. And that confirmed me that we just have to look at it for what it is,
Mhm.
something incredibly cool. I mean, even if you're doing the coolest of the coolest AI stuff, it
Yeah.
only works because they are cooling the data centers with water. If you
Mhm.
are enjoying your electric car, which is one of the trendy things to do, the minerals which are in the battery were present in water at some point and got extracted by
Mhm.
water technology. Literally, and can go on for every single part of the industry. And I do know
Yeah.
that we water professionals have a hammer and look at everything as nails and say we are the alpha and omega of everything.
Yeah.
But still, in terms of purpose, it is so cool to be in water, and it's so cool to see how there is a wave of something happening. And that's also to circle back to my first comment, why I'm a fan of what you do, because
Yes.
that is what we need. We need to be fun. We need to be cool. We need to be ready to use a membrane as a powerlifting tool, to have a talk in your kitchen with your membrane, because that's the way to grab the attention of people. And once you've grabbed their attention, then you can be serious and give them the key messages they need to hear. But hey, we are humans and we are living in a world where attention is the new currency. So if we can have a way to be cool and to grab the attention of people, we should absolutely do it.
Yeah. 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, I want to thank you so much for taking the time with me. And everybody, please go get some really interesting insight into all different aspects of the water industry, and go check out Violia's new music video, because that is a great way to grab attention as well. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks. Bye. Cool. Awesome. That was great. Thank you.